I got to see yesterday.
Superman,
No,
Elvis.
yes, no.
Okay. I don't know, Jake. Who'd you get to see yesterday?
I got to see lots of folks around Washington State. I got to see
Mhm.
you, and it was, Mike. It's funny, Mike and I may just live across the Puget Sound from each other, but we don't see each other in person that much. And I got to see Mike Hamilton in person. He was
I'm
shorter than I
fatter than you
remember him.
thought, huh?
Mike and I were at the Government Technology Conference in Tacoma, Washington yesterday, and got to catch
Mhm.
up with a lot of old friends around the state. And it was a really great conference. Lots of terrific people there. And Mike was on a panel talking about data governance. He was the guy who brought in well, you got to think about what happens when you get sued.
Well, I mean, it was a good question,
Not
right?
wrong.
It was,
That's a good
well, how
question.
can data get you in trouble? I said, well, when you're getting sued and the discovery process starts, right? We were talking about, retention limits. So
Yeah, it's
it's
not a
true.
criticism. It was a very true Mike Hamilton moment. All right. So a couple of things, folks. Today, we have a panel on the weakest link in security. Can anyone tell me what the weakest link in security
Yeah, the people
is?
watching this right
Oh,
now.
that's right. Yeah, it's people. People, people, people. People could get duped, and there are just good ways to train people, and there are just bad ways to train people. Next week, we're going to do a webinar on predictions. There is a tribal grant program. So remember the state and local grant program. There's now one for tribes. If you are affiliated with a tribe or know anybody, I don't think they've done the feds have not done a great job of publicizing this in the same
No. And the
way that others
application
have.
process is circuitous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're talking to folks about that. If you know anybody, send them our way. We'll give them some good advice. Um, Mike, I got a thing to patch Chrome. You always say patch Chrome at the end, but today you want to say it in the beginning. It must be
Yeah.
really important.
Well, it's under active exploit, and there seemingly is a lot of angst around this. So, you know, just exit Chrome, bring it up again, and it patches itself. That's all you
Yep.
got to do. But do that.
Yep. Yep. Oh, and next week we are going to send a news release out about some upgrades to our platform.
Mhm.
We're working on that right now, and it's some really cool stuff. It's some really cool stuff. Got to talk to a couple people at the conference about it yesterday, and they were really excited. So you will be too. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, between the platform and the GRC tool that we now make available
Mm-hmm.
to all our customers, things are starting to come together as, engage us, and your program will improve dramatically overnight.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and help satisfy some of these requirements
Yeah.
that, how many, it'll help you with all of the unfunded government mandates. Um,
Or sue the EPA, either way.
or whatever works for you. Okay. So, Mike, I think the biggest story is what's going on at all of these water authorities. The previous one was the one that was in Oldsmar, Florida, and it turned out that might not have been a nation state. It may,
Let's
who
call it
even
human
knows?
human error is what that
Yeah,
was.
that was human error, but now it looks like we have some real ones. What's going on?
Yeah. So this is the Municipal Water Authority of Aliquippa, which is in Pennsylvania, and I'm pretty sure I did not pronounce that correctly. So Pennsylvanians, don't hate. Um,
Or
it-
do hate? It's okay.
or okay. Um, but they use operational technology from a company called Unitronics, and this is an Israeli company.
Hmm.
And so Iranians, some gang, and we don't know if it's
Oh.
state affiliated or if it's a bunch of
Mhm.
activists, but they've taken it upon themselves to go find the instances of these Unitronics devices and compromise them. And so they did this at this water utility in Pennsylvania, and it ended up not being so bad because they can go out, they have their disaster recovery, their resilience plan, and they can go out and they can crank valves open by hand and things like that. But they did take over the operational console, right? And they had the message up there, hey, you're hacked because you use this Israeli technology and we're coming after you. So apparently there's about 2,000, if you do a Shodan search, there's about 2,000 of these out there. So we could probably expect more of this to happen. But I think the bigger story is the federal government is investigating multiple hacks of U.S. water utilities. And they're not saying who they are, they're not saying how many, but the article said it's single digit, right? So it's up to 9. And this is a bad trend. So the trend of, actually compromising infrastructure is starting to get more real.
So there's a side thing here, and it's a real dangerous topic. So bringing it up live is probably not the smartest thing I can do. But I want,
Go for it anyway.
but I heard it at yesterday's conference too, which was obviously there are a lot of Israeli cybersecurity companies.
Hmm.
There are some that are fantastic, some of the best tech out there. And yet there is I heard for the first time yesterday some hesitancy towards working with them.
Oh,
Not because of politics, not because they're not good, but because they are more
targeted.
likely targets.
Hmm.
I don't know what to do with that. I mean, um, but I hadn't made the connection on the water thing, but I think, yeah, it seems like a real delicate one, Mike. What do you think?
Well, I think there's probably a grain of truth in that. I think, maybe they are targeted. I don't know, though, that targeting those technologies specifically meet the strategic goals of an
I don't
Iran,
think so
for
either.
example, right? Because you're not disrupting the companies that produce that stuff. You're disrupting their customers.
Hmm.
And if their goal is to get people to stop buying Israeli technology, I mean, okay, maybe that's the goal, but I'm not seeing it, and I'm not
Yeah.
seeing a good reason to stop buying high quality products that come from Israeli companies. No,
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 me neither. Interesting that it came up yesterday.
yeah,
Um, and the water utilities. I mean, our water matters a lot.
yeah,
And we have sadly forecast this for a while, and it's alarming that it's happening.
yeah. Well, when this starts happening in the energy sector, it'll be a whole different ball game.
Yep,
Which is a little ironic because I live without power. You cannot live without water
that's true. Although we have a lot of water around here
for now.
for now. All right. Thanks for that
Remember the Earth
uplifting.
science degrees, right? For now.
Thanks, Mike. We won't dive into that. Nobody wants to hear the
Okay.
word. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Hey, New York State, their new cyber regulations
Yeah,
for
this is
healthcare.
this is
Yeah.
super interesting. This is super interesting. So, in the context of what they've already done with the Department of Financial Services, which is create regulations for their financial sector that are very similar to the federal ones,
Hmm.
and you got to ask yourself, well, why are you doing that, right? Isn't this redundant, duplicative?
Hmm.
But when you look at, and so they just did the same thing with the health sector. Okay, new regulations for hospitals, and they're going to put $500 million into this, right? So
Yep.
they're actually backing it up with some money. But you ask yourself, why are they doing this? And viewed in the context of the dysfunctional federal government, it seems to make sense, right? We can't rely on you because remember, okay, so I just made the joke about the EPA. Right? EPA tried to set requirements for water utilities to do a cyber assessment along with their sanitary survey.
Hmm.
And 3 states sued them and said this is an unfunded mandate. And they backed it off. All right. So if it's going to waffle like this, and every time you get somebody in office, the political wind blows a different way, and all of a sudden the regulations get tossed out. No, we don't. You can't bounce back and forth like that. And so if this is done by the states, it becomes more stable. So, I think ultimately that may be the strategy, and New York is leading the way on this.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Hmm. Okay. Well, I mean, a funded mandate is better than an unfunded mandate, and
Hmm.
I mean, we got to do something to help hospitals. So fine.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
listen.
if
Right
it works,
now,
then hopefully we get it to the other 49 states.
yeah. Well, right now, I think it's 6 or 8 states have hospital systems that are crushed. right, because of this trend of going through to the one-stop shop, and then doing
Yeah,
the
I mean, so
island
it's
hopping. It's crazy.
yeah, I mean, so it's not hospital systems, it's individual hospitals because of parent companies getting hit by
Right,
ransomware is what's happening now, right?
right, exactly.
Um, and by the way, CISA has just released a healthcare cybersecurity vulnerability
Yeah,
healthcare guide, right?
and yeah, this is really good. So this kind of leans into the common exploitable vulnerabilities or known exploitable vulnerabilities.
Hmm.
And so what they're trying to do is help organizations, in this case specifically hospitals in the healthcare sector, prioritize their activities in patching vulnerabilities based on the exploitability probability, right?
Hmm.
The likelihood of exploit of things, right? There's things that you can kind of back off on a little bit, and there are some things you need to drop what you're doing, treat it as an incident, and get it done. And so this guide is really full of this analysis of how you can bring to bear these things that you normally didn't think about, right? We think about
Hmm.
the CVSS score. Oh, it's a 10, got to get it done. Well, if it's a 10 and well, if it's a 10, you're going to get it done. But it's got a high score and it might not be exploitable in the context that it would damage a hospital, for example. And
Hmm.
so they're bringing in, all these other kind of analytics and attributes that you should look at in order to prioritize your activities. And it's really good. It is a super good guide. It,
Okay.
it's a bit of a heavy read, but it's good.
Yep. Yep. Now for something that's not such a heavy read. And look, I know people have heard about this, but we haven't talked about it here live. And so we're just going to do it now. This SEC, so the bad guys weaponizing the SEC
Hmm.
against a company. Mike,
Hmm.
tell folks if you haven't heard this story, tell them what happened.
So the AlpV gang, which is affiliated with Russian ransomware as a service, and I think there's some affiliation with the Scattered Spider gang, and I can't believe we talk about the gangs like this. But what they're doing is when they grab records from a publicly traded corporation, one of the things they can use as a cudgel is the fact that this is going to be a material impact on your company, and we can use this as leverage to get you to pay.
Yep.
And so what they did was they actually filed an SEC complaint to say that this material thing has happened to this publicly traded organization, and you should go find them. um, Bigger picture, there are other things, both regulatory and statutory, that we're doing to ourselves. So the class action suits that now follow when there is a disclosure of privacy records, they can use that as leverage and say, look, if we make all this stuff public, you're going to get class action suits and you're probably going out of business. Even if you're not, this is going to hurt real bad. And
Yeah.
so we have done this to ourselves.
Yeah, but I mean, so I mean, this to me just shows just a maturity of the attacker,
Yeah.
in a way that, well, frankly, I hadn't thought about.
I,
I mean, I think about maturity of them having customer service departments, and I think about maturity of I don't, of their attacks, but to use our own policies against it,
mhm,
that is pretty. Yeah, it's a thing there.
mhm. And I've been saying this for weeks. We're doing this to ourselves, and you have to think that in the case of like all the hospitals, right, from their parent organizations that are down right now,
Hmm.
class action suits are going to follow.
Yeah.
And as long as we keep this up, we're just going to keep suing and suing and suing. So if I'm another country and I want to be disruptive and destabilize the United States, just keep doing this. Just keep going to these parent organizations, flatten a bunch of hospitals, make it so that they can't
Yeah.
access their own records, steal those records, bring in the class action suit, put them all out of business.
Yeah.
That's disruptive and, frankly, destabilizing.
Yeah. Yeah. You know. All right. Speaking of international groups doing bad things, what is this? You have a shadowy hack for hire group.
Yeah, what's the
What?
name of this? So this is a company in India, that started out as a legit cybersecurity company and kind of morphed into, you know, basically a mercenary company, hack for hire. And as they pulled back the covers on this, and this is a really good story, what you find is they're working for corporations
Hmm.
and governments, and they do espionage, and they do basically anything anybody wants.
Yep.
And you got to think this is not the only group out there doing that. So, our list of adversaries continues to grow. We've been talking a lot about activists that are getting into, the whole geopolitical fight. But, here are these companies that'll just do it for a fee for anybody. And if you
Yep.
read the story, they're very well organized and they
Yep.
have great customer service, to your point.
And by the way, staying on the international thing, Ukraine
Oh yeah.
has hacked back.
Well, hacked forward.
I guess hacked
Uh,
forward. Well, I don't know. I mean,
you mean the
Russia
one, the,
started
the
it.
one about the Russian defense ministry?
Yeah.
Yeah, where they basically were able to get the details on the propaganda and the messaging that the Russian Defense Ministry is using
Hmm.
to kind of keep their people in line about the war going on and all the Russian boys dying. And, you got to think when that's all made public, it's going to be pretty embarrassing. And if that gets out to the Russian population, I think they're going to be irritated.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
but that's a
Yep.
that's a real, Ukrainian hacking coup on that one.
All right, Mike. Threats and vulns. What do you got?
Routers and cameras, zero-day attacks. So the Mirai botnet, something is afoot now with basically consumer grade cameras, routers, things like that. They're not disclosing the manufacturers until they get these things cleaned up. But they did say it's in one or more models of network video recorders, if you still have such a thing. And the other one is in a what they said an outlet-based wireless LAN router for hotels and basically consumer grade stuff. So that's underway, and they did say it's a Japan-based manufacturer. So if you have a Japanese device, you might want to look into this. Kubernetes, okay, the containerization. Um, Apparently a lot of Fortune 500 companies are exposing in public repositories all kinds of juicy stuff that's being stolen. So there's details in this article about how to configure this properly and the components of this that are being exploited. Probably check that out if you're a Kubernetes user. Okta, poor Okta. Um, uh, Hackers stole data for all customer support users. So, so if you ever called their help desk, your information has been disclosed. Whatever information they gathered from you. And yes, there is a Chrome 0-day right now, patch Chrome. And there's a whole lot more. You and I haven't talked in, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks or something like that. There's a whole lot more. Read the blast. Always at the end of the blast are threats and vulnerabilities.
Good. 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 Also, make sure you have a vuln scanner. Had a long, very detailed conversation that honestly went way beyond my knowledge yesterday about Tenable versus Qualys as a vuln scanner. So,
So
yeah, there you go. Um, and by the way,
Wallace, yeah,
if you get
Wallace is
MDR,
expensive. That's what you need to know.
yeah. Well, if you get, and by the way, if you get MDR from us, one of the things that you can fold into it is Tenable. So there you
Yep.
go. All right. Um, Mike, I have two things to end this. Number one is you have a kicker, but first I want to show you something. Look at my wall.
Where'd you get that?
I'd say my daughter drew it, but that's not actually true. I bought it. I bought it
Okay.
I bought it online. It was a Black Friday sale.
So Amazon's now selling our swag. That's awesome. Who did that deal? Man, that's great. It's going to be showing up all over the world.
All right, Mike, what do you got for a kicker?
The one I like the most is okay. So this is actually serious business. So Idaho National Lab got hacked and stole HR records for everybody there, and apparently a bunch of other stuff, including a bunch of DARPA work, or maybe that was GE. Maybe it was GE. had the DARPA stuff going on. In any event, they've already made public, a whole bunch of the HR records. But the thing is who done it. So, and you've heard of these guys before. They're called SiegeSec, and they call themselves the gay furry hackers. All right, and the this time, what they're saying is they went into basically the America's biggest nuclear lab research organization and stole records on thousands of employees. But what they're demanding is research on cat human mutants. Now, I don't
I'm
know if they're
sorry, what?
serious about that. Cat human mutants.
Hmm. I had a cat
Um,
once that was kind of like that.
well, so I mean, so you were just talking about the maturity of these gangs, and I cat human mutant research, does that exist?
I
I,
feel like I feel like either we're being trolled or I don't
I
know. You've
okay, well, INL is being trolled, and if they're smart, what they're going to do is they're going to fake some data on that and give it to them, as a canary that they can find later.
I have a good AI image generator to help with that. Hold on a second. I'll be right
Oh
with
no,
you.
don't. Oh,
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. As always, shoot me an email, jake@criticalinsight.com. Join our panel today. Go to criticalinsight.com, click on events, and then go to the panel. And if you
yep.
need anything from either one of us, shoot us an email. Love to see you all. Thanks for joining. And Mike, it was good to see you yesterday.
In
And yeah,
3D.
you 3D, and you weren't actually heftier than I remember, just shorter. Okay, goodbye, everybody.